first question, you said, I have two questions. So my first question is you said he used to initiate based on time, country, and candidate.
He used to present Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, so what does that exactly mean when you say based on time, country, and...
Yeah, that's a good question. And Prabhupada uses, why did I say time, country, and candidate? Because Prabhupada used that phrase. He used the phrase in Sri Chaitanya Chaitamrita Madhya Lila, chapter 23, text 105. And he used it in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, chapter 8, text 54. He uses this phrase, time, country, and candidate. Well, if you'd seen the other lessons, you would know that Prabhupada was expert in taking the universal principles of Krishna consciousness and then very expertly applying those principles, presenting those principles according to where he was in the world, according to the time he was in. Because different people in different times and places have different cultures, and there are different political places. Like when Prabhupada went, did you know that Prabhupada went to Russia? You probably know that. Do you know when he went to Russia? When did he go?
1971.
71, what month? It doesn't matter, right? It was June. Prabhupada went to Russia in June 71 because he was having some correspondence with a Russian Indology professor at the Institute of Oriental Studies in Moscow. And the professor suggested that he visit him in Moscow. So based on this letter, as soon as Prabhupada got that letter, he gave the letter to his secretary, Shamsundar Prabhu, and said, look, take this letter, go down to the Russian embassy in Delhi, and offer it as proof that they should give him and Shamsundar visas to go to Russia. And this is during the Cold War. The Soviet Union versus the West. And India was trying to remain a neutral country. But somehow or other, Prabhupada's strategy worked. He went down to the Indian, because Russia and India have a long history of mutual interest. Russia was always been fascinated by Indian philosophy and culture. And to this day, the Russian devotees, they tell us, there's always some new finding in Russia. Somebody digs up some Vedic artifact from Vedic culture in Russia. And a lot of Russian words, they're directly from Sanskrit. They tell me that. So anyway, Prabhupada went into Russia, and he was there for 5 or 6 days, staying at the National Hotel right in Moscow. There's pictures of Prabhupada walking in Red Square in front of St. Basil's Cathedral. And Prabhupada talked with Professor Katowski. So what did Prabhupada do? He had a limited time with this professor. He had maybe an hour. And the professor did not want anything recorded because it was the days of the KGB, and I mean, it's kind of like that now again, with Mr. Putin. So you couldn't openly speak something that might be interpreted as being against the party line, the Communist Party line. So Katowski goes, "Oh, come in, Swamiji. It's safe in here." In other words, this place isn't bugged. There's no, cameras or microphones. But Shamsundar, he snuck in his tape recorder. He had a cassette player, so the recording's a little muffled, but you can hear it still. So Prabhupada talked about two things. He only had limited time. The two things were, you're not this body. The body's always changing. The soul remains the same. Reincarnation is going on even within one lifetime, and then tatade antar praptir, and then we leave the body. It's just another change. And then Prabhupada started talking to him about Varnashram. Why? Because atheistic communism, Marxism, Leninism, and Katowski was a diehard Marxist-Leninist, is committed to a classless society. Everybody should be the same. And Prabhupada was pointing out, this is absurd. Yes, spiritually we're all the same, Prabhupada said, but materially, look at right in your institute here. You're a professor. You're acting in the role of a Brahmana. Somebody else in this institute is an administrator. They're the Kshatriya. They're the manager. and somebody else is cleaning the institute. They're acting like Shudra. So where's the equality? Right in your institute, there's different classes of people. So Kotovsky, because he was so, dyed-in-the-wool Marxist-Leninist, he wouldn't admit anything, even though what Prabhupada was presenting was very logical and reasonable. So Prabhupada said, all right, admit one thing. What did he say? Prabhupada said, we both follow, I follow Krishna, you follow Lenin. We both follow authority. Do you admit? Yes. He finally admitted that he was following an authority. But that was it. And Prabhupada would travel all over the world. He would bring up this conversation. And he would say, even big professors, they tell me, Swamiji, after this body is finished, everything is finished. He was talking about Kotovsky. Whereas in India, for example, even the man in the street knows that he's not the body and that there's reincarnation and, So that was kind of, you asked the question. What was the question? Oh yeah, so that was an example of presenting
time, country,
candidate.
I got it like based on the capacity of the person
and the situation too. Yeah, time, country. Sometimes we say in ISKCON, time, place, and circumstance.
Yeah.
Right? Time, country, candidate. So somebody who knows how to take universal principles, he knows how to diversify the details. He knows how to diversify the applications according to the time, place, and circumstance. This is called unity in diversity, and we're still learning how to do that. And you had another question?
Yes. My second question is, I read in the Bhagavatam too that in the Yuga of Kali, Mahamantra is the only way to get, to cross this
is the most effective way.
World. Yeah. What exactly the Mahamantra means? Like I googled it. I know Google is not the best way to get answer for everything. Bhagavatam also tried to explain what Mahamantra means, but they also talked about that there are different, ways people are taking it. So I want to know what exactly. Some says that Hare means I'm following some discourse for the Gita, and Acharya tried to explain it very well that Hare means Hara. Hara is like Radha, the Shakti.
Yeah.
And when you adorn Hara, you say Hare, right?
Yes.
So that's what it means. So I just want to know what exactly Hare Krishna, what the meaning of the mantra, why it is so divine, why it is so that it is considered as Krishna himself.
And the phrase of the Mahamantra is in many places.
Yeah, like we have in India, we have so many deities, and the Aarti, they perform Aarti. So even if it's a Ganesha Aarti or it's a Shiva Aarti, at the end everyone recites Hare Ram, Hare Ram. So I'm curious about knowing the exact meaning of this mantra. Why is it so powerful?
Well, just anecdotally, whenever we'd ask Prabhupada like that, Prabhupada would say, it's a prayer. O energy of the Lord, O Lord, Hare Krishna. O energy of the Lord, O Lord, please engage me in your eternal loving service. It's a prayer for service. Because we come to the material world because we've rebelled. We've turned our back on Krishna. Prabhupada would quote a verse in the Gita to show why we've come here. Chapter 7, Knowledge of the Absolute, text 27. Itchadveshita buddhina dvandvamohena bharata sarvabhutani sammoham sargayanti parantapa. O sign of Bharat, O conqueror of the foe, all living entities are born into delusion, overcome by the dualities of desire and hate. I want to be the center, and I resent who really is the center, Krishna. Because even though we're of Krishna, we're part and parcel of Krishna, we're tiny, and so we're called Tatastha Shakti, we're called marginal energy, and that means we have a capacity, a potential to go either toward the spiritual energy, toward Hare, the internal potency, or we can go toward the external potency, which is Maya. And then we're deluded. We're deluded by her energy, and we think we can enjoy in the material world, and it never works. We always get old, sick, and die if we're lucky, if we're, or get killed. Nobody gets out of here alive. And then we got to come back and keep acting out our desires until finally there's a divine intervention from a pure devotee. And that's why we're sitting here, because Prabhupada cared enough to leave India, come to the West, inspire people who didn't know anything about Krishna, then take it back to India and remind the Indians, why are you neglecting your own culture? Bharata Bhumite Madhusha Janma Hoila Ja. You're born in Bharat. This is a gift of India. Why are you running away from Krishna? You should Janma Sarthaka Kara Upakar. You should do the highest welfare work of giving the sublime treasure of Krishna consciousness to everyone. So, the Maha Mantra is called Nama Prabhu, Nama Avatar. It's Krishna himself in sound form. And in his second Shastra prayer, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, Nam Nama Kari Bahudani Sarva Shaktis, which means you've got hundreds of millions of names. In all the scriptures of the world, the name of God is treated as something very special, whether you're saying Allah Akbar, or Hare Krishna, or in the Bible it says, what is it? Hallowed be thy name. Hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God.
So is it like realizing that how small you are, and it kind of, you're surrendering, that I surrender.
Yeah.
Now you take over.
Yes,
so
and I'm glad you mentioned that, because when Krishna came, he demanded surrender. Sarva dharman parityaja. So if people don't know who Krishna is, that he's our beloved source, people who aren't devotees write commentaries and they say, oh, this Krishna is demanding too much. Why should I surrender to him? He's just some person demanding, it's like some dictator, right? But then 4,500 years later, Krishna comes back to earth as Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, playing the role of a devotee. Lord Chaitanya is Krishna in the mood of a devotee, showing us how to surrender. And he makes no demands unconditionally. He just says, this chant Hare Krishna. This chant Hare Krishna. And then his followers, like Rupa Goswami, he knows how to get people to chant Hare Krishna. He says, Yena tena prakarena mana Krishna nishet niveshayet sarve vinishet hasyo etayoreva kinkaraha. Somehow or other, get people to be Krishna conscious. Sarve vidhi. All the rules and regulations of Shastra should be maidservants of this highest principle of getting people to chant. It's like when Prabhupada came, he started all alone on 26th 2nd Avenue in New York City. So what was he doing? He was chanting Hare Krishna. If you've heard these early recordings, leading these long kirtans, getting people attached to the mantra, giving them a higher taste, getting them plugged into the spiritual energy. Because you know what their motives were? In the Lower East Side in the 1960s, they were just trying to get high. Because they were experimenting with psychedelic drugs. So Prabhupada would say, you want to get high? Well, chant Hare Krishna. Stay high forever.
Yeah.
No more come down. No more hangover. No more crashing. No more bad trips. Stay high forever. And then he would get him attached to prasada. And he was cooking. And he was the best cook. So everybody was getting addicted to prasada. And then finally, after 3 initiations, one on his Vyasa Puja Day in September, and then one more on Radhastami 2 weeks later, and then in October there was an initiation. Finally, after 3 initiations, one of the earlier initiates came up to Swamiji, they were calling him Swamiji, and said, Swamiji, you said there was what are the rules to this practice? He said something about rules and regulations. So what is Prabhupada's response? Very good boy, very good boy. I thought you'd never ask. Prabhupada knew it had to come from us. We had to want to practice the disciplines of bhakti. No intoxication, no illicit sex, no eating, no gambling. That's standard, but he did not stress that in the beginning because he knew people like us were born and raised on eating, intoxication, illicit. I mean, in the womb, my mother was smoking, my mother was drinking, she was eating meat. I was taking that stuff in even in the womb. And then finally, of course, the propaganda, illicit sex followed later, because that's the whole culture, just enjoy the body. So we were born and raised on this stuff. So Prabhupada knew he could not change us overnight. He had to gradually spoon feed us Krishna consciousness, give us a higher taste. And then when we wanted to follow, then it would come from us. And therefore, as soon as that person asked that question, the next day, and we know the date, it was November 25th, 1966, Prabhupada posted a handwritten notice. Maybe you've seen this. It said, all initiated devotees must, and then in his own writing, he listed the rules. And it was written in a kind of a different way. What did it say first? All initiated devotees must avoid all kinds of intoxicating habits, down to coffee, tea, and cigarettes. All initiated devotees must avoid illicit sexual connection. All initiated devotees must avoid mixing intimately with non-devotees. In other words, doesn't mean we're not hermits, we're working in the world. But we save our intimate relationships for devotees. And there were more things. And then at the end it said, and all initiated devotees must always chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Signed, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, dated November 25th, 1966. And where did he post that notice? Do you know?
No.
On his bathroom door, because they were all using his bathroom. They were using his towel. Prabhupada had to stand in line to use his own bathroom. That's how unconscious we were. Oh my God, what Prabhupada tolerated? You can't even imagine his godbrother doing anything like that, right? Prabhupada was one of a kind, and he was completely surrendered to Srila Bhaktisiddhanta. Therefore, he was completely empowered to do what he did. Turn people like us into aspiring Vaishnavas. Wow. Jai. So, time, place, and circumstance.
Thank you.
Stay high forever. Right? There you go. Prabhuji. And ideally, we should have a mic for questions too. You got another? Okay. Yeah, push it out.
Hare Krishna, Guru, Dandava Pranam. Very nectarian class. And I'm not just saying the words, it is indeed nectarian. My question is more around the last point that is there on the board. Cite the benefits of deeply understanding Srila Prabhupada's unique transcendental position. Now, while I definitely am not capable of developing that deep understanding, but we can surmise, even in your answer to Mataji, you gave so many points that you could think, oh, this is how he used to think, this is how he was a Jagat Guru, this is how he enabled the movement, all of that. But instead of me forming assumptions on how to develop that deep understanding, I want to hear from you how we as neophyte devotees can develop that deeper understanding to truly benefit from his transcendental position. Hare Krishna.
Okay, that's a good question because, as I said, Prabhupada is not simply the Diksha Guru of 4,780 people that he initiated, approximately initiated in 12 years. He is the spiritual master of all generations. So when I tell people, like you just said to me, what's your realization? Well, my realization is that my core identity is not that I'm a Prabhupada disciple. It's not that I'm his initiated disciple. It's that I'm his Shiksha follower. He lives forever by his divine what? Instructions. And the follower lives with him. That's what Prabhupada said when he dedicated his Bhagavatam to the spiritual master. And that identity of being Prabhupada's Shiksha follower is available to all generations. And that's how, the Hare Krishna movement is going to expand and spread to every town and village. Because the tendency is, over time, as things get more and more dispersed and disunited and, just loses the potency. But the more we share the same core identity as being Prabhupada Chandugas, Prabhupada followers, then the potency should actually increase. And I'll give you an example. To this day, if you meet, like, is anybody from Sri Rangam here? Or South India? Or anybody been to Sri Rangam? Okay. So that's the seat, the home of the Ramanuja Sampradaya, right? Right? Ramanujis. So, when did Ramanuja appear? Does anybody know? What year? According to the Christian calendar? 1017. In 2017, the Ramanujis celebrated their millennial. In 1996, we celebrated Prabhupada's centennial. The Ramanujis have been around for 1,000 years now. How have they kept it together? Because they know, all generations know, like if you met a serious Ramanuji today, and you asked him, say you knew a little Tamil. Anybody know Tamil? No? Okay. So if you asked the person, oh, Prabhuji, who are you? And you saw the Ramanuja Tilak, and you guessed that he's a Ramanuji. Aryan, Ramanuja Dasan, I am your servant, the servant of Ramanuja. But Ramanuja appeared 1,000 years ago. And this person, undoubtedly, he has a Diksha Guru, and he's got his Shiksha Gurus, but he's identifying himself as a Ramanuji. We should take notice of this. That's how ISKCON is going to go on. I experienced the same thing in Udupi. Did anybody been to Udupi in Karnataka? Dakshin Kannada? Yeah. It's a great place. It's a little island of Krishna consciousness, and it's like the Vrindavan of South India. Udupi Krishna Temple and Car Street and the 8 mutts that take turns serving Udupi Krishna. So, Madhva's seat is right there still that he spoke the Bhagavatam on. And they're all Madhvites. That's how they identify. And they'll say, and my beloved Diksha Guru is so and so, my beloved Diksha Guru is so and so. But they identify as Madhvites. Same thing. So we have to, and so how do we get this identity, as Prabhu is asking? Well, we get it by being educated from the beginning, actually, ideally from the beginning. Like if I were a new person walking into this Mississauga yatra, if I were lucky, the elders of this yatra would introduce me first to Srila Prabhupada. Here's the founder Acharya. And if you want to know his teachings, here's his Bhagavad Gita as it is. And if you want to know his life, here's the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. Read this. Not just the one volume, read the whole multi-volume set. How many people have read the full multi-volume Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita? Okay, not many of you. You really need to read that to get a real feel for the person who wrote the Bhagavad Gita as it is, who translated those verses and gave those purports. And then you need to start a sangha around either his teachings, or well, you already have that, but usually at the end of this seminar series, people say, okay, what do we do now, Suresvara? Well, would you like to know more about Srila Prabhupada? Why don't you have a Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita Sangha, get together once a week and read it together. It's always more fun when you read it together, right? It's one thing to read alone, but the danger is you fall asleep when you read alone, right? So do it together, and then you can parasparam bhavi, you can converse and enlighten one another in conversing about me. Kesham Sakati Utnana. So to really get it, who we are and how we're going to stay together for 10,000 years, as predicted in the Brahma Vaivantika Purana, Golden Age of Kali, we have to really get grounded in our founder Acharya. In the Ramanuja Sampradaya, Ramanuja is called the Udharak, the deliverer. They have a shastra called Sri Prapanna, I forget what it's called. But he's called the deliverer guru. And then all the gurus who come after Ramanuja for 1,000 years, they're called the Upakarak. They're the benefactor gurus. And how do they benefit their disciples? They teach their disciples how to study Ramanuja's teachings, how to worship his Murti, how to execute his Vishishta Dvaita mission. Does that ring a bell? What books do we study every day? Prabhupada's Bhagavatam in the Bhagavatam in the morning, Gita in the evening. And whose Murti do we worship every day in all our centers? We sing Sri Guru Vandana every day in iskcon temples. And whose mission do we execute? Prabhupada's mission. He gave us it's his uniquely empowered vision of how to spread Krishna consciousness all over the world that we follow. And there's a lot of things in the mission we haven't even done yet. That was in the points. So, personally, I only saw Srila Prabhupada, maybe half a dozen times, 6, 7, 8 times. And how many times did you see?
Maybe 4 or 5.
Yeah, we didn't have much vapu. We weren't like GBCs or sannyasis or like that. But we were always absorbed in reading Prabhupada's books as they were coming out and hearing his lectures, his tapes. The technology then was cassette tapes. Now at the push of a button, you can bring up anything, technology. It's every town and village and electronic device. That's what we need to do. And that's how it's going to go all over the world. Okay, good question, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. And somebody else had a question. Prabhuji, a mic. Lock the mic.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu. This is, I know it is not out of the topics which we have on the screen.
Wait a minute. That's a no-no. And then before we let Prabhuji ask his renegade question, does anybody have a question or a comment based on those learning outcomes? Going once, going twice. Okay, Prabhuji.
So I just heard that you met Srila Prabhupada only a few times.
Mm-hmm.
So and in your lecture you said that he's the best cook. So he's the best cook.
Yeah.
So did you have any opportunity of having anything which Prabhupada actually made it? And
I don't think so. But I've eaten prasad by people who Prabhupada trained to cook. So it's like in parampara, I did taste it, but not directly, no. Did you ever?
No, but I had the opportunity to cook for Prabhupada, just papadums. But Prabhupada liked his papadums. He didn't like them fried.
Yeah,
he liked
on
them
the flame.
Toasted over the flame.
Yeah.
And not black. You
Yes.
had to just toast them perfectly. And I was trained up and I did it for Prabhupada when he visited that Subhavalasa's place.
Based on papadums, I'll tell you a small
Okay, then
ancient
you the right
thing.
to Mataji. Now let's see, this is what happens when you ask those kinds of questions. You start traveling all over the universe. All right. go
So
ahead.
the roasting papadums is an ancient thing based on which it's It doesn't happen now. Nowadays, girls don't even know how to cook, and it's perfectly okay for a mom-in-law like me. I'm a very brand new mom-in-law, and my daughter-in-law know nothing about cooking. But back in the days, my mom used to tell me that when the bridegroom used to come and check out the girl, the first test she has to pass is to roast the papadum without black spots on it. That was and if she can do that, that's okay. Now she's passed with grace marks only, because it's only papadums.
That's going to make a successful marriage in India. Huh? Wow. The key to a man's heart is through his stomach. We say that in English, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the girls these days take him to the restaurant.
Oh yeah, the lost art. Okay, Prabhuji, you have a question? No, you, holding the mic. Come on.
It's not related.
That's okay. I don't think anybody have any related learning outcomes type questions? No. Okay, and by the way, when we bow down and we're finished, then the tendency is for people to want to come up and say, Prabhuji, I didn't want to say this in front of everybody. Don't do that. This is your last chance. You got to give everybody the benefit of your question. You got to, be generous and don't be afraid. Everybody. Okay. What question you already have? Let's see. Anybody else?
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that within our center, we have a reading group that reads Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita every Friday. So anybody interested can join the group. That's there at evening timings, so we can get you the timings.
Mm-hmm.
Also, there is another group that reads Srila Prabhupada's letters.
Mm.
We've been reading Srila Prabhupada's letters for the past 6 years now.
All right.
We are in 1974 right now.
Okay.
Every day, morning 5:45. So anyone wants to join that group, you're most welcome.
You do this on Zoom,
We do it on Zoom.
huh? Okay. Well, that's why you guys are growing, right? Because you're already tuned in to Srila Prabhupada. But expand it. Now, do any men come to this?
Yes.
Oh, that's good. Usually the ladies are the head of the men. Prabhu, you have an unrelated but Krishna conscious question?
I can make it related. So it says everyone can build a personal relationship with Srila Prabhupada.
Mm-hmm.
And the way you explained it was, he's like a gem, depending on how you see it, you see a different version of him. And as I find that very beautiful, but how do we actually build that relationship? Because I may be wrong, but the way I understand this finding a point of like common ground, right? So what does it in like practical terms mean to build a relationship with Srila Prabhupada?
Sure, that's a good question. Because when we hear the word personal relationship, we think of a physical body, right? But Prabhupada was always, and I presented this in previous lessons, but Prabhupada was always stressing, and he said it actually in this lesson.
in this one
What did
too.
he say to the girl?
Feel it.
Oh, that you should not think. She said, oh, I feel so lonely when you're not. Oh, that you should not think. That's the first thing he said. There are two, he didn't say Vani and Bapu. He said physical and vibration. So the physical it's very, again, Prabhupada only he was only with his Guru Maharaj 5 or 6 times. But there wasn't a moment when he didn't feel his Guru Maharaj right by his side, because he was so absorbed in the mission his Guru Maharaj had given him, and he gave it to all the Gaudiya Math people, but only Prabhupada did it. So there's physical and there's vibration. Now I'll tell you a kind of a humorous / ghastly story how I realized this. Okay, so I only saw Prabhupada 6, 7, 8 times, but I did get to go on 3 morning walks. And to go on a morning walk with Prabhupada was not common. Did you ever go on a morning walk?
No, I was
Yeah.
promised to, and it never happened.
Usually to go on a morning walk, you had to be a temple president or a GBC or a sannyasi. You had to be a big shot, right? But I got to go on my first morning walk in Miami in February 1975 on Miami Beach. And why did I get to go? Because my temple president knew that I was struggling. I was a young man. I was 28 years old. Now the body's 78. You do the math. 50 years ago. Wow, what happened? Time flies. So anyway, I was struggling, and because I was distributing books and collecting money, but I knew after 5 years in the Hare Krishna movement, I joined in July 70, that I really was better suited to working on the books. And I did. I actually joined the BET and I became the indexer. You know, when you look in the back of the book, you see index. That's what I made. I made the indexes for 4 years. So anyway, I was struggling. So my temple president knew that. So he said, "Hey, Suresvara, how'd you like to go on a morning walk with Prabhupada?" He wanted to give me a boost. You know, give me something to look forward to. So I said, "Yeah, I'd never been on a morning walk." I'd heard some morning walks on cassette tapes. Anyway, it was a misty morning. It was February. Yeah, it was kind of cool because it gets chilly in Miami sometimes, even in Miami, southeast United States. And there was a lot of Bhaktivedanta Institute devotees on the walk. Prabhupada had just formed what we call the BI. You know the Bhaktivedanta Institute? It's kind of the scientific branch of the Hare Krishna movement. They're really on an upswing. They're on a renaissance now, making a lot of good waves in the scientific community. Anyway, I was on a morning walk, and it was kind of chilly. There weren't that many people on the walk. And where we were walking in Miami Beach, the sand was very high and it was very steep. And then the Atlantic was coming up. So there was only a little part where it wasn't too soggy and it wasn't too steep. So there wasn't much room to walk. So Prabhupada, we were walking single file behind Srila Prabhupada. And somebody would call out a question from behind, and then Prabhupada would stop, he would plant his cane in the sand, and he would turn to answer all of us. So at one point in the walk, I stopped right in back of Srila Prabhupada's head. I mean, like this far, you know. But I was in such maya that that's all I could think of, that, wow, I'm right in back of Srila Prabhupada's head. Jagat Guru, spiritual master in the universe. I was like a rock star groupie, you know, looking at a rock star or something. And I was looking at Prabhupada's, you know, Bengali, golden brown Bengali skin, and the male pattern baldness had pushed his shikha down to practically his neck, a few gray hairs. I'm looking at the silver hairs on Prabhupada's shikha. So somebody had asked a question, because Prabhupada had stopped, and I was right in back of him. And he was turning to answer, and I was just looking at his physical body. So I didn't hear the question, because I was so absorbed in his body, his physical body, and I didn't even hear the answer. So right while I was thinking, wow, I got. This was a unique experience. It wasn't a voice in the sky. It wasn't skywriting. It was a heart transmission. Tene Brahma Vrida. And my initiation, Prabhupada said, Suresvara means Brahma. So then he said, you are Suresvara Das, you know, you're a servant. So anyway, so I got this heart transmission. And you know what the message was? It was, yes, you are right in back of Srila Prabhupada's head. But you, my friend, are nowhere near Srila Prabhupada. You are a million light years away. You are nowhere, because you can't hear him. You're just thinking of the body. You're just looking at the body. So that like was mortifying. I was devastating. It was like, oh, you know. But then in the next instant, I became ecstatically happy because I realized, I experienced that it was true. Vani, the instructions, the sound vibration is more important than Vapu. That was kind of that was my vaccination, my inoculation against Prabhupada leaving. As devastating as it was in November 77 when he did leave us, I was, I understood. I started cultivating a deeper relationship with him through his teachings. And it was really helpful. It was very helpful. So it's not a matter of being close to him physically. And I'll tell you, a lot of devotees, godbrothers and godsisters, who did have a lot of that vapu, that physical association, when Prabhupada left us physically, they fell apart. They couldn't handle it. They couldn't take it. Because their whole experience of Krishna consciousness was based on Prabhupada being with us physically. But Prabhupada came and he was elderly, and he was always saying, look, I'm an old man, I could pass away at any time. Please understand what I'm saying so you can learn to understand Krishna consciousness and you can give it to others. But we couldn't imagine him not being with us because we were so much in the bodily concept of life, a lot of us, especially me. But we all have an equal opportunity to be intimate with Prabhupada by absorbing. What does it look like? Was your question? What does it really mean? One more anecdote in this regard. My god sister, and I mentioned her tonight, the late great Jamuna Devi. You hear her every morning. Govinda, right? Adi Purusham. She was the lead singer. She was the lead singer on that song that became a big hit in England. Tamaham bhajami. So anyway, she had an experience at the Ardha, the half Kumbh Mela in 1971 with Srila Prabhupada. And here's the experience. All the devotees were there in India, all the Western devotees. Prabhupada called us his dancing white elephants, right? Because Prabhupada knew that we would be a big hit. We would be a novelty. That the Indians would say, what is this? Western Vaishnavas? Are they high on LSD? Are they CIA? Who are they? Surely the CIA has paid off Swamiji to smuggle some spies into India to persuade us to be aligned with the West instead of the Soviet Union. And India is trying to remain neutral, right? So anyway, so why in the world would Prabhupada go to the Kumbh Mela? Because why do people go to the Kumbh Mela? This is so they can be their heavenly elevation or salvation by wading into Mother Ganga, just the right moment and all this stuff. It's kind of a karma kanda thing. But Prabhupada knew that because it's the biggest religious gathering in the world, 30 million people or whatever it is, that Prabhupada wanted to take his dancing white elephants down there to Prayag to preach Krishna consciousness because so many people are there. So the devotees were there doing Harinam, and then they'd invite all the people they were meeting to come to Prabhupada's tent at the Mela and listen to Prabhupada speak. And it was very good. So anyway, so Jamuna used to tell this story, and it's in her books too. You ever read her books?
I started it.
Yeah, Dina Tarni, her friend for years, compiled the books. So anyway, so Prabhupada, there were different tents. So then the ladies had a tent, and the men had a tent, and Prabhupada had his tent, there was a cooking tent. It was just a whole camp full of tents. So when Prabhupada was sitting in his tent, first of all I'll say, and there was a pandal tent, there was a lecture tent. So Prabhupada was to speak one morning, and a lot of people were coming to the tent to hear Prabhupada speak. And so Jamuna, whenever Prabhupada would speak, because she loved to hear Prabhupada speak, and she joined in 1967 in the Haight-Ashbury Temple in San Francisco, during the counterculture era, the height of the whole, psychedelic Summer of Love and all this stuff. So whenever she heard Prabhupada speak, she would sit, right in front of Prabhupada, and he would speak at a lectern. And so just before Prabhupada came to speak, Jamuna is sitting right in front of the lectern, and then she hears this. Psst! Jamuna, you see where the Indian ladies are sitting? You see where the Indian ladies are sitting? Around the back and to the side? You should go sit with them. Now, Jamuna is a Western lady, and she's used to sitting right in front of Prabhupada. So Jamuna's thinking, what? What is this? And then she looks and she sees where the Indian ladies are sitting, and she says, oh, let me see what this is all about. So she gets up, she walks over to where the Indian ladies are sitting around the back and the side, and she said, and then Prabhupada comes and delivers a great lecture, and then he takes questions, and the Indians are asking all these challenging, and Prabhupada just roaring at them, Bharat Bhumite Manusha Janma Ayudha Janma Sakata Tori Kara you're born in Bharat, you should be preaching Krishna consciousness. Anyway, and so finally, so Prabhupada triumphed. Everybody bows down, and then Prabhupada goes back to his tent, and then all the devotees are running around setting up for the next event. And the Prabhupada's tent, it came down to maybe a foot off the ground. So whenever a devotee walked by Prabhupada's tent, Prabhupada knew who the devotee was by the bottom of their dhoti or the bottom of their sari. Please turn your phone on. Thank you. So, the bottom of their dhoti or the bottom of the sari. So Prabhupada was chanting in his tent, and then he saw the bottom of Jamuna's sari. So then Jamuna hears, Jamna. In Bengali they say that, why is that the thing? So she goes in the tent, yes, Srila Prabhupada? And then Prabhupada said, so, you do not like to hear me anymore? Oh my God. This was too much for Jamuna. She just burst out crying. She couldn't take it, because she had been right front and center, and then she heard, this sannyasi that told her to go sit in the back, So she couldn't even speak. She was so overwhelmed with tears. And then finally, when she collected herself, she told Prabhupada what happened. And then she said, so Srila Prabhupada, what should I do? And Prabhupada, at first he didn't say anything. He just looked down and he said, yeah, this is India. And then you know what Prabhupada said? He said, my Guru Maharaj told me that those who wanted to always be seen with him, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, they just like to be seen, like photo opportunities with the Guru. Prabhupada said, Guru Maharaj told me that they were like mosquitoes, simply sucking blood. Yeah. So from that, Jamuna understood that if she really wanted to be close to Prabhupada, that it didn't have to be about her being physically near him, because it was India. It was a different place. It wasn't the Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco anymore, So from that time on, Prabhupada or Jamuna started cultivating this very intimate Vipralamba Seva, this service and separation. Moved. So by the time Prabhupada left, she didn't fall apart. She was fixed. And there were other times when she was still serving Prabhupada physically, like in 1972 in Vrindavan, Prabhupada spoke famous lecture series at the Radha Damodar Temple in Seva Kunj, and she was cooking for Prabhupada every day and serving him. And she and her husband Guru Das, they were key players in building the Krishna Balaram temple that they just celebrated 50 years in Vrindavan. Now her husband, Guru Das, he had a lot of vapu, a lot of physical association. For him, that was what Krishna consciousness was, being with Prabhupada physically. So when Prabhupada left Guru Das, by his own acknowledgement, he did fall apart because he wasn't as fixed in the Vani, in the instruction, in the teaching, in the vibration. So he just couldn't take it. So after he was away for about 20 years. I mean, he's back with us now, but it was too devastating for him. So we have to cultivate this real deep attachment to Prabhupada based on the sound vibration. That's what it looks like. It looks like in sound. It looks, we don't see with our eyes, Prabhupada said, we see with our ears. We see with our ears. Shanska Chakshusha. So really develop that intimacy through sound, and you won't feel lonely. You won't feel, whatever generation you are, or whatever your gender is, or whatever your country is, or you feel close to Srila Prabhupada.
So I have a little.
Okay, Krishna Das has
just a little sort of
anecdote.
Well, we all have our telephones, and with our telephones, we can actually choose what you have for a ringtone, right? And you can customize your ringtone. My ringtone is Srila Prabhupada chanting Hare Krishna. And sometimes it's happened in the bus, in the subway, and so many people get to hear Prabhupada chanting. And sometimes I don't answer it quickly because I want everybody to hear the full Maha Mantra. And actually one time I was working at Sick Children's Hospital in the intensive care unit in my job, and there was a 10-year-old boy, and his heart stopped. And I was on the Code Blue team, and I ran into the room and I started doing CPR. And then so many other people came into the room, and they were, giving him drugs and medications and trying to get his heart going again. And so when you're doing CPR, I was pushing on his chest, and his head was right there. And I had my phone in my pocket. And just at about 4 minutes into the code, Purnamasi calls me on my phone, and the phone just starts ringing, and my ringtone goes on for about a minute, Prabhupada chanting Hare Krishna. But the boy ended up not coming around. His heart never started again. And at the end, there was an Indian doctor who was the doctor in charge of running the code that time. And I'd already discussed with him a bit about Krishna, and he was very favorable. In fact, I think his uncle is the temple president in Kurukshetra temple in India. And he said it was amazing that Srila Prabhupada came to that boy just when he's at the point of leaving his body. Because generally when the heart stops, you're still in the body for about another 3-4 minutes, and then the soul kind of goes, okay, this body is done, I'm out of here. And so it happened just at that point when he would be leaving his body. So it was really quite an amazing thing. And you never know if you have Prabhupada's ringtone on your phone, when it might go off, and it might be just when somebody near you needs to hear Srila Prabhupada. So keep that in mind.
On that note, we can end by hearing Srila Prabhupada say, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai!
Wonderful.